Good morning and welcome to the Friday morning live stream. I am Ryan Ingram, and today we're going to be talking about some basic real estate investing concepts. So, I guess to start off, I'll go ahead and catch you guys up on my week. This week, today, we're closing on 9 properties. Pretty excited about that. And one of those is a vacant lot. So, we're buying a vacant lot in the area for about $5,000, maybe 5,500, and it is a little more than half an acre. It's 0.67 acres, I believe. So immediately, I don't think we're going to build on it. We're going to try to in the near future, but for now, it is going to be the carrying costs of $80 per month for mowing the grass, and no utilities, minimal amounts of insurance on it, maybe like $40 per year. So let's call it $84 a month in holding costs. So we'll see. But my plan with that is that as these market values continue to increase, building new may start to make sense again. Because, I mean, right now it is, and historically here in the area, our whole business model has revolved around it being more cost effective to purchase a property and renovate it than it is to tear one down or build new. And I don't think we're anywhere close to being to the point where it might even make sense to start building new on a large scale. However, it's definitely something that we are interested in, at least just gaining the understanding of how to do, because we haven't done it. But let's be clear. One of Dayton's biggest issues is the fact that it has 10,000 vacant housing units still, and the majority of these should not be torn down. The majority of these have the ability to be rehabbed and to become like a functioning unit of society again. So we're a long way off, and the lot that we purchased is in like a suburb of Dayton, not the actual city limits. So it may make sense there, but the housing market in Dayton is really kind of dragged down by the number of vacant properties in the area compared to the suburbs. Most of the suburbs don't have even enough vacant properties to speak of. Hello, Ryan. Could you please talk more about cash for keys? Yeah, absolutely. I actually there's a small group that meets right before this, and we were actually talking about this morning. So I've got a lot of thoughts on this that are fresh on my mind. And the cash for keys concept is one that I'm not necessarily fully on board with, but I suppose it has its advantages. And really, if you have somebody that is actively destroying your property, if you have somebody that is just if you purchase a property and they are on a month to month lease or no lease at all, and you would rather have the property vacant so that you could renovate it and rent it for market rate, then it might be a good idea to give someone cash for keys. So anytime where you would prefer it if the property would be vacant, but it is not, then cash for keys is an option available to you that may cause both parties to walk away satisfied. And, in theory, cash for keys kind of circumvents any court proceedings or legal fees. And it also decreases the time frame of dealing with the problem. So if you know that in order for you to get this person out of the property, you'd have to give them a 30-day notice. or if it's like a non-payment of rent type situation, if you know your legal fees are $450, if you know that the legal process will take two months to go through, then you can add 2 months worth of rent to that. And if you're looking at a bill of $2,500, then if you can tell this person that if they move out, you'll give them $1,500 when they give you an empty house, then that might be an option that would save you some money and save you some time. I think most commonly it's used when people purchase properties and there's an old kind of month-to-month lease. The property isn't in hateful shape, and you would rather it be vacant so that you could make a couple of updates and then rent it closer to market. So cash for keys is a good idea then. If you have someone that is in the process of getting evicted, it may be something that you could offer someone so that they don't have that eviction on their record, so that you don't have to go through the entire process, and both people can go away kind of satisfied. So there's a potential for cost savings and time savings for cash for keys, but um, it's like it's not a real solution. And even though it, in theory, would kind of circumvent you from the legal process, I would still consult with an attorney and make sure that you're making good decisions as you navigate through that process. Because one thing that is really noteworthy is discrimination claims and the equal housing opportunity. All those things. Those are things that you should do your best to take some continued education or find some local classes being put on. And if you're interested in investing in real estate, you should definitely pay attention to those. And I say that mainly because, from an insurance perspective, most insurance policies that you will have on your properties don't actually cover any sort of discrimination claim. Insurance does not cover crimes. So, in the event that you commit a crime, then your insurance company is not going to support you. It's not quite the way that insurance works. So you're definitely going to want to mind your P's and Q's on that and make sure that you are staying above board in all your transactions. Yeah, thank you. All right. So any questions you might have in the chat, go ahead and post those. Got this little disclaimer rolling after I just gave some non-legal advice. It's good to have there. And let me go through the properties that we're closing today real quick and give you a little breakdown. I know people really enjoy hearing where I found these deals. One property is just word of mouth. Probably everywhere I go and everyone that I talk to at some point in the conversation, it is revealed that I love real estate investing and that I am always looking for additional properties to purchase. And I do my best to not introduce that into the conversation in an annoying way, but I definitely want everybody to know that in the event they ever find somebody that is interested or willing to sell a property, then I would love to hear about it and potentially buy it. So this paid off, and just in talking with people around the neighborhood that I live in, I am about to purchase today. We'll purchase a property that is in the neighborhood that I live in, and that is solely just word of mouth. My mouth. People that I'm gonna buy properties. So 5 of the 9 that we're closing on today came from the MLS. 3 were from kind of off-market leads from realtors. I think some people call them pocket listings. And then 1 was just word of mouth, me running my mouth about how I enjoy purchasing properties and will happily do so to any property in any condition. All right. Good morning. I appreciate your content. I have a question. I gained about $120,000 in equity after purchasing a new construction February 2020. About to list the home and use entire proceeds for my first rental. What would you do with $100,000? Yeah, I think that's a really good question. And congratulations on gaining that much equity. And I think the $20,000 discrepancy between your equity, you're probably considering the realtor fees and just what it takes to sell a house. So good work there on running your numbers pretty well. And let's see. The first thing that I would do is I would try and figure out if there is any opportunity for you to keep the house and still utilize the equity. So, um, does this property make sense as a rental at all? If you have $120,000 of equity in it, probably not, but maybe, depending on what your mortgage is and what the rental rate may be. And if there is any scenario at all in which the property makes sense as a rental, then I would keep the property as a rental. I would move out if you're living in this house. I would rent the property out. Perhaps before I'd move out, I would try and find a local credit union to give a home equity line of credit, or to do a cash out refinance on the property, whichever one you're more comfortable with. As a general rule of thumb, the fewer strings that money has, the better off you are. Lines of credits have just a little bit more strings attached to them than the cash out refinance. So if you're able to do a cash out refinance, pull out that equity and still be cash flow positive when you're running it as a rental, I would do that. If you are not necessarily able to be cash flow positive after you do a cash out refinance and pull out the amount of equity that you're interested in pulling out, then I would check and see what the opportunities for you to get a HELOC are. Because that won't impact your numbers. Your mortgage is going to stay the same. And then that line of credit, kind of like a credit card secured by your house, you're only going to pay interest as you utilize those funds. And since you're using those funds to acquire a rental property, then you will have the ability to immediately make cash flow on that new rental property. Now, the only caveat is you want to be careful when you are acquiring long-term assets with short-term capital. So lines of credits aren't necessarily the best things to use for acquiring new properties, especially in the event of down payment, because you're going to have to pay off that line of credit somehow. So let's see. Mortgage is $1,200. Rental is about $2,000 in the area, but rental subdivision on my street are staying on the market. My wife is an agent, but not experienced as an investor. Also a veteran. Sweet. You guys have, it sounds like you guys are doing all the things. Well, I mean, there's a decent spread there between the rental rate and the mortgage. So yeah, I would try pretty diligently to figure out how to make the numbers work and hold on to this property as a rental. And then I would figure out a way to utilize the equity while still owning the property. Because, in the long term, holding on to properties always makes more sense than selling them. If you if they are if you have the ability to use them as a rental and have cash flow coming in from them, because you're still going to get the appreciation on that, which you've experienced a great deal of already. And for the most part, generally speaking, that's only going to go up if you have a long enough time horizon to experience that. So, the way that I approach all of these types of situations is like through a long-term perspective. And, I want to own any of the properties that we purchase for, several decades. And hopefully I will pass down all of these properties to my kids if they're willing to take these properties and run it as a business, which hopefully they will. If not, they just have plenty of assets that they can sell. So, refinancing a property, utilizing your equity, holding on to it as a rental doesn't trigger any taxable events. Sure, the cash flow from the property is going to be taxable, but you're going to have the appreciation. You're going to continue to have that principal pay down every time you make that mortgage payment. And you're also going to have all the tax benefits associated with that property. Now, if you were to sell that property, even after your fees, you'd be left with 100. I'm not quite sure about your situation with the property. There's a chance, depending on how long you live in the property. I'm not up on these things because it's just not, selling property isn't part of our business model. But there's a chance if it's your primary residence that you don't pay any of the capital gains tax. However, if you are taxed on that, it'll hurt and it'll lessen that amount. So from a numbers perspective, if you have the ability to not pay taxes on the money that you pull out, and in the event you have to pay taxes, the amount of money that you're left with after you pay the taxes may be comparable to the amount that you're going to get from a HELOC or from a cash out refinance, which if it's owner occupied, you might be at 95%. If you are refinancing as an investment property, you get 75%. So we're talking about the difference of 20%, which is likely the same amount that you're going to be taxed if you have to do so. So all in all, I guess what I'm saying is it makes sense to hold on to things as long as you can, if you have the ability to still create cash flow from it. So I also, am prone to some hoarder-like tendencies, and I would just prefer to sell nothing ever. No capital gains, sweet. Well, option A for me to summarize would be keeping the property, renting it out, even if you have to go slightly below market since they're sitting, just get it rented so that you're not out of pocket on a monthly basis, and then utilize the home equity line of credit to jumpstart your ability to acquire additional properties. Just keep in mind that you're going to want to pay off that line of credit pretty regularly. So if you're still living in it long enough, do the cash out refinance before you leave. That way you get 95%. Or set up that HELOC before you go. And then keep it in your portfolio and let time and that asset start working for you via the appreciation, principal pay down, and tax benefits. And you're still going to have some money available to you that you'll be able to go out and purchase some additional properties. If you have to sell it, then it sounds like you've already done one round, and your wife being a realtor, you're already familiar in the market. So if you do have to sell it, then I would just be mindful to make sure that any property that you purchase in addition satisfies that purchase price plus rehab cost is equal to or less than 75% of the after repair value. Okay, then I would go that home equity line of credit route so that you don't mess up with that interest rate. And this interest rate is another significant reason as to why you do not want to sell this house and you want to keep it as a rental. So even if you have to take a haircut on the market rent and rent it out for 18 or 1900 instead of that 2000 just to get it rented, a warm body in there, a another income earner to pay that mortgage payment for you, then yeah, 2.99%. I mean, uh, it becomes more and more like free money every single year that interest rates stay so high, or not interest rates, inflation. Yeah, so that's a real victory, because anything that you go out, let's say, you capture that 100 grand and you're able to go out and get something. Whenever you get a new loan on it, you're not going to get 2.99%. So, yeah, under no circumstances, my under no circumstances is my opinion should you sell that house. But again, uh, there's just as many ways to make money in real estate as there are people investing in real estate. And my particular style of investing in real estate could be comparable to hoarding. uh, will there be any seasoning period of refinancing a property which was bought with all cash? Yes. Yes. So, uh, every single bank has its own requirements and expectations for seasoning. Now, I want to clarify and say that there are two different types of financing that you should really be on the lookout for, especially in the single family home space or the 1 to 4 unit property space. Now, one of those, like the single family home space or 1 to 4 units, Fannie Freddie, the government backed loans, those are pretty cookie cutter in their requirements. And you could call 5 different banks. And if they plan on originating the loan and then selling it to Fannie Freddie, then they're going to give you that same list of requirements. So be on the lookout for that and do your best not to waste time talking to about 10 different banks thinking that you're going shopping when really they're all selling you the same product that is backed by the government and has all of the same guidelines. Those are very cookie cutter. Um, and then you have another section of refinancing homes. It's like 1 to 4 units. And those are ones that banks will hold inside of their own portfolio. So these are loans that they are doing out of their own capital, and they are considering it their investment. So they want to hold these for 20 years, 30 years, whatever they come up with. And when you start talking to banks about those of their portfolio loans, then all of the banks have their own guidelines as far as what they're comfortable with and what they're willing to offer. So one bank that we work with has no seasoning requirements. However, realistically speaking, they also take about 2 months in order to close a loan. So from start to finish, it's 2 months. So technically, you can't, even though there's no seasoning, you're going to own it for at least 2 months before you're able to do that. Most of the banks that we work with have about a 6-month seasoning period just because they want to see a healthy track record of that property performing, collecting the rents, and getting at least a 6-month history of the expenses of those properties. I would say it's not uncommon for banks to have 12-month or 18-month seasoning. So one of the things that you can do is go to a number of local credit unions or smaller regional banks and talk to them about their portfolio loans from 1 to 4 unit properties. Now, my brother recently said that he started doing something about asking banks for their lending guidelines. And he said most, so long as they don't think that you're a competitor, they will be happy to give you those. And that will save you from needing to extract all of this information out of one of their loan originators or salespeople. And it will allow you to just read it directly for yourself and figure out what those requirements are. And then one of the things that I would say we did early on that I would highly recommend everybody do, and that is, find a couple of banks that you want to have long-term partnerships or relationships with. Figure out what their lending guidelines are, and then figure out how you can, tweak or manipulate your business model in order to cater to those lending requirements. So if you have this particular style of purchasing properties, but you're getting really frustrated because you can't find any bank willing to work with you, then it would be significantly easier. And in the long term, you're going to be more successful if you figure out what that bank wants. If they are willing to finance these types of properties for you, then you should go out and find as many of those properties that the banks are looking for that you can, rather than trying to do your significantly more difficult, but maybe more profitable way of doing business if you can't find any lenders against it. So I would say, to kind of recapture what I just said, uh, cater your business model around the requirements from the people that actually have the funds and they're willing to lend them to you. I think that's really helpful. Now, our closings today start at 10 a.m. So I'm going to have to be out of here a little bit earlier, but these are fantastic questions. I've got a little bit of a cheat sheet for some questions that we have been asked on the channel. So I want to go through that real quick as well. So one of the questions is how to invest in real estate for true financial freedom. And when people first reach out to me, they want to talk about real estate investing. A lot of the people initially form their goal around this monthly income number that they need to hit in order to achieve financial freedom. And the only reason they're interested in investing in real estate is to no longer need to work their normal job. And I think as simple of a math problem as that becomes, it's not a reliable one, because the traditional, if you research real estate investing for any length of time, the problem that they're going to have you solve for is, let's say you need $2,000 a month to live. And you know that from analyzing one particular property, you're going to get $200 per month in cash flow. So if your cash flow per property target is $200 per month, then, simple math says that you need 10 of those in order for you to walk away from your job and never need to work again. And while that may work on paper, that is never the way that the cash flow from these actual real estate investment properties are going to go. So if that is the goal that you have in mind, I truly believe that you're setting yourself up for failure, because that is just, from my experience, not the way that cash flow works. So while you may have $200 net cash flow allocated when you list out all the expenses of one property, and let's say that you think you're being very conservative in including 10% for capital expenditures, 10% for repairs, maintenance, and 4% vacancy. So you're padding those numbers by allocating 24% on the monthly basis to the quote unquote unknown or potential things that happen. Well, I think there are two main issues with that. First, none of the investors that I've ever met that analyze properties this way actually have a bank account that correlates appropriately to the capital expenditures or repairs and maintenance. Most investors do not have a capital expenditure fund that they put 10% of the rent collected in on a monthly basis. Similarly, they do not have a repairs and maintenance bank account where they put 10% in on a monthly basis. And very much so, I would say this is the one that no one does, is that 4% vacancy. Nobody has a vacancy account that they put 4% in on a monthly basis and then take out anytime that property has vacant in a monthly fashion. So since that isn't done really by anyone, I think it's a silly way to analyze properties in that sense as well. Now, I think it's prudent to save for things as they and will go wrong. However, allocating that, thinking that you're safe and thinking that you are going to be able to remove $200 on a monthly basis in order to pay for your lifestyle, I think is a little bit aggressive and unrealistic. Because the second thing is, in the fact that cash flow doesn't work this way, is let's say a capital expenditure event does occur, like let's say the roof needs to be replaced and the roof is going to cost you $6,000. Well, even if your property is rented out for $1,000 per month, your 10% capital expenditure rate, $100 per month, you're talking about 60 months of collecting this capital reserve or capital expenditure or capex repair just to pay for this one roof. So you are immediately 5 years behind whenever this occurs. Now, in the event that 5 years passed and this roof does or is paid for solely from your capital expenditure reserve, your 60 month of $100 per month savings pays in full for that roof, then now you are set with a capital expenditure fund of $0, and now you're fingers crossed, hoping that nothing happens on that property that may be needed then. So your furnace, your water heater, your siding, anything to do with the exterior, you're just kind of hoping that that doesn't happen until you accumulate enough funds. So, in the event that your capital expenditure fund is not fully funded to pay for that roof repair, then ultimately what's going to happen is you're going to see that you have $1,000 set aside, $1,200 set aside for this property for unknown things to occur. You're faced with a $6,000 bill. Where does that money come from? If it comes from another reserve account, then you owe it to yourself to replenish that reserve account, right? And what do you do with that? You're probably going to use your $200 per month that is quote unquote net cash flow, that is one of the 10 properties that you need to retire to replenish that reserve so you're not left with unnecessary exposure. I hope that makes sense. And I hope you can see that that math problem is extraordinarily faulty, because the fact of real estate investing is, even if you are buying a brand new house, it is a ticking time bomb. Everything that this house is designed to do is not the way that nature intended. So nature is always going to be weathering, beating down, and causing maintenance to be necessary on your property. So I would say, realistically speaking, most people, most properties need to be fully replaced on like a 70-year basis. So that is a significant amount of money. Even if you have a bunch of preventative maintenance stuff, roofs go out when they go out. Hot water heaters can only last so long. Floors, get worn from foot traffic. Paint gets dirty, gets faded. Windows break. So concrete cracks. All of these things happen. So the financial freedom inside of investing in real estate doesn't happen from the cash flow of the set number of properties that you are setting out to get. I think the underrated ways to make money in real estate investing long term, to truly start creating financial freedom for yourself, comes in the appreciation that you are ultimately going to be able to recapture via lines of credits or cash out refinances. I think it comes in the principal pay downs of the loans that you use to acquire these properties. So you're also going to be able to recapture those via refinances or, lines of credit. The tax benefits you're going to be able to make as you accumulate a portfolio. You're going to be able to make more active income without realizing so many taxes because of all the depreciation that you're going to accumulate. And, from the cash flow perspective, the way to get some financial freedom there is by doing enough volume on the real estate side that the cash flow from any of these properties insulates you from needing to pay for them from your active income. So we experienced this when we had over 20 properties. Now we went from 8 properties to 21, but in looking and talking with other people that have, you know, smaller portfolios, I think 10 is that magic number. So I think everybody needs to get to 10 properties absolutely as fast as they can in order to be able to sustain themselves and their portfolios long term. So once you get to that 10 properties, or for us, that 20 property mark, then what you're going to notice is the cash flow from all of these properties are sufficient to cover any one thing that goes wrong with those properties on a monthly basis. So you're going to be able to start tapping into these laws of large numbers or laws of averages, where you are not personally needing to come up with the funds to repair that roof. You're not banking on, this 10% that you're setting aside on a monthly basis in order to hopefully accumulate to the point where it's sufficient to pay for that roof as it's needed. In the event you have 10 properties, the chances of all 10 of those roofs needing to be replaced at the same time is very low. So if you have 10 properties all rented out for $1,000 per month, then your 10% capital expenditure and your 10% repairs and maintenance are now $1,000 per month for the capital expenditures and $1,000 per month for the repairs and maintenance. So now you have $2,000 per month. So now in the event that you have a $6,000 roof that needs to be done, you have 3 months worth of those things set aside. Or it's going to take you 3 months to replenish your capital expenditures. Now, as your numbers grow and as the amount of cash flow that you're bringing in goes, this effect compounds. And you're going to reach a point where you have more money coming in than the repairs necessary to address all of the accumulating deferred maintenance on your portfolio. So to recap, the true financial freedom that exists in real estate investing is inside of the appreciation, inside of the principal pay down, inside of taking advantage of the law of large numbers, having more properties. The more you group together, the easier it's going to be to sustain the individual properties themselves. And to also add one more thing at the last minute is real estate is also an industry where you're able to purchase property for less than what it's worth. So the formula that we are always running is purchase price plus rehab costs is equal to or less than 75% of that after repair value. Now, the reason that that formula is important is, let's say a property is worth $100,000. The most that we are willing to be in on that property is $75,000. So each time we purchase a house using this formula, assuming that all of the homes we purchase are worth $100,000, then each time we purchase a house, we're walking into $25,000 worth of equity. Now, that always comes with strings. Generally, there's some type of deferred maintenance that needs to be immediately addressed on the property that is going to take capital to put in, but that is factored into those numbers. Or maybe there is deferred maintenance on the business or the admin side of the rental. So maybe it is rent that is really below market. That is another reason below market rents that properties will go for lower than what they're worth. But real estate is this unique thing where you're able to take advantage of I'm tempted to call it the arbitrage between the value of the property and what someone is willing to accept for it to be able to walk away from it. So if you're able to walk into equity and then you're able to experience appreciation, then you're able to, if you leverage it to 75% loan to value, you're going to be able to pull out all your initial capital, which again is not a taxable event. You're going to be able to, take advantage of the principal pay down on that money that it's a loan. You've already received the funds back. And then as you create volume you're going to be able to take advantage of not needing to personally pay for these repairs, or your business need to personally pay, because the incoming rents are more than sufficient to handle the maintenance on these properties. And then as enough time passes, that appreciation that is always happening in the background, that principal pay down that is always happening every single month, that these residents are making those mortgage payments on your behalf. Every month that happens, your net worth increases. The amount of capital that you're going to be able to one day tap into and take out via a cash out refinance or a line of credit, which again is not a taxable event, that is going to grow and grow. So setting out to retire with 10 rental properties to replace your $2,000 per month living expenses is an unrealistic idea. However, replacing your $2,000 per month salary with 30 rental properties is a very realistic idea. And also in doing so, you're going to have the ability to access additional capital based on the amount of equity that you are generating on a very regular basis. What a long explanation that was to one video. Let's see. Could you let me know the differences between sheriff sales versus trustee sales? No. No, I can't. So sheriff sales is when the county is selling the property. I'm not sure what a trustee sale is. I wonder if that's an estate sale, if it's being sold to settle an estate. I've heard that verbiage a lot. And generally, that is just something that I hope doesn't happen to me. But when the kids get together and they say, "Hey, we don't want to manage this house together. We don't want this property. We just want the funds from this property," then the kids would get together and or the trustees would get together and come up with an amount that they're willing to take for that property to go ahead and settle the estate, to get to liquidate all the assets and disperse them to all the beneficiaries needing those disbursements. So generally, there is a decent amount of opportunity to get great deals from estate sales, trustee sales, whatever you want to call them, when people are interested in settling an estate, because all of the involved parties are disinterested parties because they want nothing to do with the properties. They live in different states commonly. They are in different industries commonly. They have their own families commonly, and they do not have the time, or they are not willing to deviate from their own lives in order to intervene and get the max amount of money for this. They would rather just kind of go away, and they're willing to sell for below market so that they could just be done with it. That's my guess. And then sheriff sales forced by the county, often to do with taxes or liens that aren't being paid appropriately. So one person asked, what exactly is the MLS website? So the multiple listing something services source. I don't really know what the MLS stands for, but that is the system that all realtors kind of share, where you list a property for rent or for sale, and everybody knows about it. That is the housing market. So pretty much any on-market deal, you hear off-market deal. Off-market deals refer to properties that are not listed on the MLS. They are at that point only known by a few parties involved and not all of the people interested in real estate in that area. The MLS doesn't, to my knowledge, have its own website. I know like the local area board of realtors has a version where their local sources are listed, but all of the big websites that you've ever heard of to view properties, Zillow, Trulia, Redfin, Realtor, all of those pull from the MLS. So if you're ever on any of those websites or any of those apps, then you are scrolling the MLS. What would be a reason a bank wouldn't bid on the property? So most of the times that banks go to the courthouses and bid on the property, it's because they have a government-backed loan. So in the event that that occurs, what the bank does is, let's say there's a $50,000 outstanding balance on the property. And it's a government-backed loan. The bank will go, the minimum bid will start at 5,000, 6,000, something to get people like you and I that monitor these foreclosure websites and see the minimum bid will get really excited about. And then you get there, you're ready to bid $7,000 or $1,000 more than the opening bid. You think that nobody else is going to show up. And then lo and behold, the bank is in the corner and they bid it up to 50,000. That is common because the bank needs to buy it that day for what they have in it, that outstanding loan, because the government is going to reimburse them that $50,000 so that they don't actually lose any money. Because if that property sells that day for 10,000, well, the bank is out 40 grand that they're never going to be able to collect. So in the event that the bank bids on it, then they will sell it back to the government, and then the government will release it back to the public as a HUD home, where only owner occupants are able to bid on it for the first couple of weeks, and then after that, it becomes open to everybody. Or if it is truly just a valuable asset that the bank believes that it can sell on the market for more than the bid amount. But most banks don't have the bandwidth or the capacity to really be as diligent in this area as they should. Service. There we go. It depends. I mean, we have purchased several properties from Sheriff Sales, several properties that were bank owned, and also several properties to settle estates. And I will say that while those are very good deals, none of those are the best deals that we've done. The best deals that we've done have been just off market, word of mouth deals. Another question is the best way to screen tenants in 2022. And I don't think that this is something that is ever going to change. It is always going to be trial and error at best. So when you are screening your tenants, there's a lot of apps out there. There's a lot of property management software that have made this extremely easy and very streamlined, to where the resident goes in, or the potential resident, prospective resident, will go in, enter all their information, pay the application fee. You look it over, make sure all your requirements are met, and then that application fee will actually pay for the background check. And then you need to verify the employee history and also the previous occupancy history. So contact the previous landlord or property management company, whoever was in charge of collecting that rent on a regular basis, just to see how timely those were. And there are so many different ways to make it difficult to screen residents. It's very time intensive. And I would say the biggest thing that you should do is leverage technology as much as you can. Use one of these streamlined services. We use Appfolio. It has a lot of integrated features. It does the credit check, the background check. There is even some services out there that will verify the previous residency and the employee history out there for you. And if that's something that you have the bandwidth to do, if that's something that you're willing to pay for, either way, make sure that gets done. That's very important. And always be mindful of people putting down employers or previous property management companies that aren't in fact real. So do some due diligence, make sure that you verify everything on the front end Um, and then be prepared to make some mistakes because you're not going to be able to catch everything. And there are a significant number of things, for better and worse, that will just never show up on any screening report out there. You have no idea what type of house these people keep. They could allow pizza boxes to pile up indefinitely. They could accumulate trash in every corner of their home without ever taking it out. And they could have every intention to wreck the property once they come in. They could check all the boxes on the screening report. They could get, an A plus as far as a global review of their stuff goes, and then they trash the house immediately. So conversely, you have no idea if this person is going to take really good care of the property. You have no idea if this person is going to go above and beyond to handle their own, preventative maintenance, if they're going to change their own air filters or not. Either the good aspect of this or the negative aspect of this won't show up on a screening report. So while tenant screening is always going to be extraordinarily important and one that you need to be very guarded while you're doing, to verify all of the information as accurate, you're also going to want to couple it with some type of regular inspection. And we have started using rent check, and we have found that to be extraordinarily helpful. So we have been able to catch people in the act of destroying our properties by allowing pizza boxes and trash to indefinitely accumulate. And we have been able to remove these people after 3 months, where fortunately, yes, it was a very stinky trash out and junk removal. However, not enough time passed for them to tear up the flooring, the cabinets, or really mess up the paint on the walls from all of the trash and bugs that were to come. So I would say not only being diligent in the tenant screening process is really important, I would make sure that you set up some type of system to regularly go in and inspect these properties. You can also leverage technology in order to do that as well, by utilizing things like Rent Check. And Rent Check is a resident facing app where the resident will do the self inspection. They'll open up their phone, they'll take pictures of the appropriate things. And we have also found great benefit in this because, there are some people that live in properties that never want to be a bother. And while some things are legitimate maintenance orders that we need to hear about, they don't want to be an inconvenience, and they will never file them. However, Rent Check allows those to come to light, and without them filing a work order, you're able to go in and fix these things necessary so that your property can be preserved, so that it can stay in fantastic condition, and so that your resident will always have the best and cleanest place to live. So those are my thoughts. How do you go about extensive rehab services, work with a GC, or build a network of your own tradesmen? Somewhere in the middle. So we have different contractors. They're not GCs. They don't necessarily sub out much. But we have just general contractors that are able to do everything. And then, it's really about building relationships with those guys. And I'm not saying a general contractor in the sense of somebody that doesn't do any of the work themselves, but oversees uh, a number of different trades and makes sure that everything is scheduled and done accordingly. When I say general contractor, I just mean somebody that doesn't have a particular trade, but is able to do the drywall, the flooring, any of the carpentry, some of the exterior work. I am not talking about those that do roofing, electrical, and plumbing. So the way that we kind of separate it is we work with a lot of different contracting teams. That it might be a crew of one or maybe four people that go in and do the bulk of the work. And then we have our roofers, electricians, and plumbers who we send in to most of the jobs and fix any of the issues that arise there. So we don't look for like um, true general contractor in the retail sense, where they oversee. Generally, those guys will just add 10, 15, 20% on top of what the trades cost. We have a project manager who oversees a lot of different contractors and who schedules the trades that I mentioned. So that's how we structure it. But these really heavy rehab projects, I mean, they're a really big lift. So we early on, we purchased a couple properties from the city whenever they were doing a program called Lot Links, where if the property was vacant for 2 years, if it was at least 2 years delinquent on their taxes and the utilities were off, you could put a deposit down with the city. They would do a board of revisions for closure. And then all you would do is pay them the legal fees, which would never exceed $2,500. So we bought 4 properties for about $2,500 each. And as you could guess, many of those were extreme rehabs. And on 2 of those, we went through, I would say, about 4 different contractors where they just got burned out. They would do a lot of the work. But taking a massive rehab project from start to finish is a heavy lift, one that very few people are interested in or capable of. So I would say that having really good conversations with your general contractors or with the contractors that you're using, figure out what they're comfortable with, figure out what their limitations are, and kind of figure out their own little quirks, because since we're all human, we all have them. We know our contractors that will never tell us no, and that will always say that they can do anything that you request. Well, that's not true. But because that is who they are, because they will always do that, we kind of set parameters around it. We can say, hey, with all of these projects that I see that this guy's doing right now, we're not going to ask him because he's going to say that he can do it, but we know that he's not going to be able to get to us for the next couple of weeks. And then also just in trial and error, where we have had, these guys that say, yes, I can do plumbing. Well, once we move somebody into that house, we have plumbing issues. We send the plumber out, and the plumber will generally say something like, hey, I don't know who did this plumbing for you, but you should never let them touch plumbing again. And, we make mental note of that, and we don't let people do plumbing again that we heard that from. We send the plumbers in when it's time. So that's my answer to that. Well, thank you. I would like to start my investment path starting next year, and I don't know yet how big I will grow. After how many properties in my name will you recommend creating an LLC? I think that's a really good question, and congrats to you for not jumping to make an LLC before you buy any properties at all. I think that is really prudent and very smart. There's really no... So if you were to get an attorney and an insurance agent in the same room and you say, hey, protect this fellow's assets, what the attorney would do is they would try to make as many different buckets or entities as necessary to where if one of them went down, it wouldn't be a catastrophic financial loss to that investor or to that client, right? What the insurance agent would do is he would make sure that every single one of those entities that the attorney creates has an appropriate amount of insurance to where in the event a lawsuit or in the event a loss occurs on that entity, then the insurance is going to be equivalent to or greater than the assets that are protected inside of that structure. So what I would say is, for someone just getting started, I would buy them in your personal name, and I would make sure that each time you buy an asset, you have the appropriate amount of insurance to at least insulate your net worth, perhaps exceed it. So if you're worth, 100 grand, make sure that you have at least 500 grand liability limits on all your policies. Now, when it comes to liability on insurance, that is not the area that you should ever venture to save funds. So if someone is willing to write a policy for you with $1 million liability limit, then I would do that, because the difference between $1 million liability limit and a $500,000 liability limit might be $7 per year. You really shouldn't attempt to save money from a liability perspective. So if you have these properties in your name, that is going to do is going to benefit you. You're not going to waste any additional thought or effort and as you're getting started and figuring out if this is even something that you want to do on attorney fees or legal structure and formation fees. And depending on what state you're in, those can get pretty high and be pretty big annual expenses. In some states, it's minimal. And on the states that's minimal, I might be quicker to form a legal entity. However, I think the most important thing is getting lending for properties. So each individual under the current guidelines is allowed to have 10 different mortgages from Fannie and Freddie. So from those government-backed loans. Now, once you have your 10th Fannie, Freddie, or government loan, then you cannot get any more. So in the event that you can't get any more from them, you can still get additional mortgages from banks that keep them in their personal portfolio and don't resell to Fannie Freddie after the loan is closed. So if you have the proper insurance, which you should, especially since you asked this question, this is the feedback that I'm getting, then you'll be okay. And I think you should go ahead and get all of the government loans that you can. So max out your 10, have good insurance on them. And I say that because the government loans will always be the lowest interest rate and have the longest amortization period. So you'll be doing a little bit better if you're able to max out those first. Once you max out those and you go over to the bank's local portfolio side, then it might make sense for you to create an LLC. Still have plenty of insurance on that LLC and insure everything properly. But these government-backed Fannie Freddie loans, they cannot be made in the name of an LLC. They can only be done on your personal name, and they can only you can only qualify for those loans based on your personal income and the rental income after you've been in a real estate investor for 2 years or more. They're generally not going to count that income if it's before then. So getting these loans becomes a little bit problematic, especially early on, because they go off your debt to income, which if they're not counting the rental income coming in from these properties, then it's going to lean real heavy on your personal income. So that's my thoughts. I think I answered that question okay. Is it okay to leave the properties in my name and buy several umbrella policies? Well, you only need one umbrella policy, and that one umbrella policy is going to become more and more expensive the more assets you put under it. But there's only one umbrella per entity. So you will have one umbrella. If you create an LLC, then that LLC can have one umbrella. And umbrella insurance is really tricky because it's just so nuanced, because each company kind of creates their own policy forms that they're comfortable with about what an umbrella actually is. So there's almost no umbrella policies that are, comparing like apples to apples. And then it's always prudent to have an umbrella policy. However, if you have the appropriate insurance on each property is going to have liability limits. So if each property has its own liability coverage, then you'll be good. And then if you have an umbrella on top of that, then you'll probably also be even more insulated. So yeah, I think you're on the right track. I think you're making all the right decisions, but insurance is one of those things that is extraordinarily specific. So make sure that you sit down with a local independent insurance agent. Don't go to like a State Farm or Allstate or any of like the Geicos or big box insurance providers, because they lack the appropriate products to truly be individualized to fully insulate you the way that is best. these just like the big banks, they just try to shove every person that comes through their door in this cookie cutter product to save time, and that's not the appropriate way to approach life. As all individuals are unique with their own strengths and own weaknesses. 9:05. I need to start skedaddling. Let me look at some of these other questions. I think I'm doing good though. Honestly, I think I've provided some decent answers. We got 13 people on. That's encouraging. Let's see here. Oh, good morning, Ryan. Good morning. I want to start wholesaling real estate. Any suggestions? What's the worst mistake that I can make? I find that a lot of new wholesalers don't really kind of know what they're doing. And the biggest mistake that they make is they accidentally lie to investors and the actual sellers. So just be really transparent with both sides and, be super transparent. And if you're just starting, then I would say finding some investors that have the appropriate capital to buy deals from you. I would reach out to them, figure out exactly what they're looking for, and then go out and find it. So, wholesaling real estate is really just a significant amount of marketing. And there are two different ways to do marketing, right? You can do like a shotgun approach where you can just buy like a massive list of all the properties spanning all different types of issues. And you can say, hey, I'm going to reach out to 10,000 property owners and I'm going to get at least a couple under contract from that. And that's true. Or you can go to, and then once you have those properties under contract, now you have to just blast it out to 10,000 investors and hope that one of these investors is interested in this deal, right? Or you could, which I think what is going to set you up better for success ultimately is if you find a couple of investors that have the appropriate amount of capital and you figure out exactly what it is that they're looking for. And if they're willing to buy any of the deals that you find that meets that criteria, then I would go out and I would focus all of your marketing efforts on finding deals that fit those investors' guidelines. I think that is going to get you a lot more closed deals, have a lot less failed contracts, because one of the things that I've seen a lot of is, the wholesalers that take the shotgun approach is they will go out and they will put properties under contract because, they're just reaching out to any and everybody. They'll put properties under contract without really knowing the area, without really understanding, the investor's perspective of it. And they will put these properties under contract for too high. And then because they're not going to be able to find any investors that buy that, that deal is going to fall through, which is only going to lead to frustration on both parties. Because when you put it under contract with that seller, you're not saying, hey, I'm going to try and find somebody that wants to buy this property. And if they don't, then it's going to fall out of contract, right? Well, you're telling the person that owns the property that wants to sell it, you're saying, hey, I will buy this from you for $40,000. And then in turn, you go around and try to find somebody that's going to buy it from you for 50 or 55. And a lot of times that works and it's great. But, you don't want to give this seller any sort of false hopes, string them along, or not be very clear on exactly what it is that you're doing. Because it only makes the buying and selling of properties for other people significantly worse when you have a bunch of bad apples being sneaky and not performing in the market. So that's my take. That's how I would approach it if I were to become a wholesaler. I think more important than finding the deals is establishing yourself with a network of investors that are looking for deals. I would not be one of these companies. I get emails all the time from people that I've never heard of that are just wholesalers that put me on lists. So I'm getting deals for Oklahoma, New Jersey, places I've never been to, and I will never go to buy deals. I don't think buying these lists is a good idea form the relationships, figure out what they want, serve them, add value to their businesses, and you will be rewarded in more ways than just a wholesaling fee. Well, hey, I think this was a good live stream. I sure do appreciate everybody. These are always one of the highlights of my week. So thank you guys for showing up. Thank you guys for asking a whole bunch of questions. And next week, Friday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern Standard, I will be right here, ready to answer any of the questions that you come up with throughout the week. Now, I know for this entire year so far, we've been putting videos out daily, and those have started doing worse and worse. So when we first started doing them, we were getting about 2,000 views each, and now we're less than 100 on many of those. So we're going to pivot. We're going to try to put out a little bit higher quality videos, maybe 2-3 times a week, that are a little bit more interactive and have more graphics and sound effects and all of that, because that's what the algorithm and the people that kind of coach people through how to build YouTube channels say is important to keep people's attention. So we're going to try a couple of different things. I appreciate all of your support in doing that. You know, it is sometimes discouraging to see these videos not do that well, and then to see really silly things do very well. But at the end of the day, you know, it's not necessarily the views that I'm after, but I just think that there is so much bad information going out about real estate investing from people that have done minimal transactions, that getting some appropriate information to the appropriate people, and also just building relationships. I've built, you know, multiple relationships that have made this entire YouTube channel worth it. I've now met, you know, 2 or 3 people from this that I interact with on a daily basis now, and we solely met from YouTube. So yeah, if you enjoy this content, feel free to share it. And as you see these videos come across, please let us know what you think about them, because this is a work in progress. And we would like to keep our growth metrics trending upward. And right now it seems like we have plateaued. And I understand that I put out dry content. And this is also the content that just makes me happy. So I would prefer to do this than any of the other kind of more entertainment type things. So I know a certain element of the lack of growth is just me being who I am, doing what I like to do, rather than, just like we talked about, the whole bank things, right? So going out, finding out what the banks want to give you money for, and kind of creating your business model around that. I am not following that advice when it comes to YouTube and them saying, hey, if you want to be really pushed by the algorithm, do X, Y, and Z, just because that is not ultimately what I enjoy doing, or the type of content that I enjoy creating. So this is it, and this is for you guys. So every Friday, 8 a.m. Eastern Standard, probably for as long as I will be in real estate, which I hope to die with properties under contract, I'll be right here answering questions and always making this time available for the people that are interested in growing their portfolios, bettering themselves as people, and you know, doing the right thing and really serving the community through real estate investing. That's where my heart's at. If this channel is valuable to you all, I would love for you to share it with some other people that are flirting with the idea of getting started in real estate investing. So thanks. And next week, I will see you all right here.